How to hook a reader throughout your novel, to get them to never want to put the book down, to make them turning the page, page after page, until they get to the end. We're going to be dealing with that question, and we're starting right now. It's what I call the carrot effect, and it's something Stephen King does very well. You start off by throwing something out there, a hint, something bad, the antagonist, but you don't go into detail. You want to leave it as a mystery. You want the reader to wonder, what is it about this antagonist? Something scary, something you wonder about. The reader can sense it, and they will turn the page trying to figure out the answer. What you want to do is get the reader to ask, what is going to happen next? Because let's face it, that is what reading is all about. It doesn't matter what genre you're writing. You could be writing horror, comedy, romance. It doesn't matter. It's all about getting the reader asking one question. What's going to happen next? That is what makes them turn the page. As soon as the reader stops asking, what's going to happen next? They lose their motivation. They don't want to turn the page. How many times have you been reading a book and you found yourself putting the book down and planning on coming back to it later, but you never do? Because that feeling, that wonder, that mystery, that hook is no longer there. If you ever read a Stephen King novel, he has this funny way of making you wonder what's going to happen next. It's all about putting your protagonist in the greatest amount of danger. One of the biggest problems that amateur writers have is that the protagonist is safe. The protagonist doesn't really have to deal with problems or danger. And I don't mean a horror novel. It could be anything. It could be a romance novel. Look at Romeo and Juliet. There was tension. There was the hook. It dealt with their parents trying to keep them apart. If Romeo and Juliet was just about two young teenagers in love, we wouldn't have the motivation to carry on. But Shakespeare knew to put that hook in there. And what was that hook? The parents being at war with each other, not liking each other, and trying to keep the kids apart. That hook kept them going. Look at Hamlet. If Hamlet was about just a guy walking around the castle, thinking out loud, we would have no motivation to turn the page. But it was Hamlet's father, as a ghost, coming to him and telling him he was murdered, and asking his son to solve the mystery. That is what made us turn the page. That hook about his father coming to him as a ghost, that made us wonder, what's going to happen next? How is Hamlet going to solve this problem? You always want your story feeling like a car moving forward. The reader has to sense movement. There has to be this compelling reason to turn the page. How many times have you been reading a novel and it just isn't there? You don't feel any reason to carry on. It's like a car coming to a stop. A successful novel is like a car going from first gear, second, third, and fourth. The novel gets faster as it goes. Just like a car would, switching gears. You don't want to be in third or fourth gear and go back to one. It slows the novel down. You always want to feel as though there is a forward movement. And a lot of that comes from the antagonist. The more you fear the antagonist, the more you're going to want to read on. Look at the movie Star Wars. The biggest selling point of Star Wars was Darth Vader. We as the audience feared him. He was big, tall, strong. It looked like he had there was nothing that could stop him, no weakness. So we always wanted to watch to the end of the movie to see how this was going to play out. If Darth Vader was weak or just not intimidating, we wouldn't care. Some of the greatest stories are all about the antagonist. Look at the movie Jaws. Imagine Jaws without the shark being 25 feet in length, being a great white. Even the mayor summed it up by saying, if you say barracuda, some people say, what, who? But if you yell shark, we have a problem on our hands on the 4th of July. That line right there can truly sum up novel writing. If you're writing a book about some creature in the water terrorizing people on an island and you make it a barracuda, chances are people are not going to want to turn the page. But if you make it about a 25-foot great white that will attack anything that goes into the water, now all of a sudden the reader wants to turn the page. They have to know how this is going to end. However, it's important to remember, don't just give away all the details of your antagonist right away. The more you hint at them at the beginning, the more it's a mystery in people's mind. Just like how the shark in Jaws was not shown almost until the end of the movie. But in the beginning, we only saw the tail, the fin, maybe a hint. And that's what made people wonder, what is this thing? If we had seen the shark right at the very beginning, it would have taken away the fear. It's like when you watch a horror movie when there's something moving in the attic upstairs, and the homeowner slowly walks up the stairs towards the attic door. Once the attic door is open and we can see what's up there, it's no longer as scary. But it is the slow walk up the stairs that gets the audience going, wondering what is behind that door. It's important to remember that this idea of the carrot theory does not just apply to horror novels or thrillers. It can apply to drama. Look at the novel Terms of Endearment. It's about an overbearing mother and a daughter wishing to have unconditional love. But the mother is always disappointed and hard on her, criticizing her. The mother in Terms of Endearment is a great antagonist. One of the most powerful things you can do with an antagonist is have them in people's minds, even when they're not in the actual chapter itself. Just like how in the movie Jaws, we didn't have to see the shark to fear it. Even when there were people on land talking, the idea that the shark was swimming in the water is what bothered us. It creeped us out. Even in Terms of Endearment, even when the mother wasn't in the chapter, we were always thinking about her. Even in the book One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, we were always wondering about the head nurse. We were always wondering, what is she going to do next? Even when the patients get out of the hospital and they're out on the boat, we always were wondering about the head nurse. How is she going to react when she finds out that the patients got out of the hospital and they were out sailing on a boat? She wasn't on the screen, but we were always wondering about her. As a writer, you want to create an antagonist that is on the reader's mind, even when they're not in the actual chapter itself. Dan Brown understands this. Dan Brown, who wrote the Da Vinci Code, said he comes up with the antagonist first. He doesn't come up with the problem or the protagonist. He thinks of the antagonist, and he makes them as cold and mean and as ruthless as possible, because he knows that it's how is the protagonist going to stop this overbearing, powerful antagonist. That is the hook that makes us keep reading. If you've ever read a Dan Brown novel, you know that the antagonist cannot get any meaner or colder. And we wonder how Robert Langdon is going to solve this problem. We want to make sure that the antagonist is bigger and stronger than the protagonist. Even when they're not on screen or in a chapter, we wonder. But don't give away too much at first. You want to just hint. You want to just have them in the shadows. It's like when you're reading a Stephen King novel. You can't help but feel as though that antagonist is behind you. Like you have to look over your shoulder, wondering, where are they? It's like when you read The Shining. There is no actual antagonist. It's the hotel. It's the feeling in the atmosphere within the hotel. Now that is powerful writing. When you can create a villain who's not actually there, but just taking the hallways and the rooms of a hotel and making it the antagonist. What's interesting, though, what I was mentioning a moment ago about Terms of Endearment, there was actually a sequel to that movie and the book called The Evening Star. A lot of people don't even realize that this exists because it wasn't as successful as the original. And there was one big problem. The problem with the sequel is that the antagonist was now the protagonist. And that's actually what you don't want to do. The novel didn't actually have an antagonist. The sequel didn't. And when you take your protagonist, when you take your antagonist and make them the protagonist, you're left without someone to fear. And you notice this in the sequel to Terms of Endearment. The villain is now the good guy, and there is no bad guy. So you have no reason to turn the page. That compelling reason, the hook, is now gone. Something interesting Stephen King did in Shawshank Redemption is he wrote it from Red's point of view. This is interesting because he didn't write it from Andy's point of view. He wrote it from someone who had escaped. And Red narrates the book from the beginning, leaving us to wonder, who is Andy? Where is he? How did he escape? What happened? And the warden is the villain. We fear the warden and what he does to the prisoners. If the book didn't have a mean warden and it was just two prisoners walking around a prison cell talking, we wouldn't have the motivation to turn the page. But we did have motivation by Andy not being there. Red giving us a narration of who Andy was, not is, but was, in the overbearing warden. We wanted to know how that was going to end, and it made us keep turning the page. In the movie Psycho, we were always wondering who was the mother. We never see her, we never hear her, but Norman Bates is always talking about her. And it's because he hints at his mother. He doesn't go into detail, he just hints about his mother. That is the hook that keeps us watching. It makes us want to read the book. Who is Norman Bates' mother? If she was seen right at the beginning, the movie would have no power. But because she was hinted at, we feared her, even though we never saw her. Who was she? That made us keep watching. What a great hook that was. Imagine if you were reading a novel and there were two kids saying, let's go inside that house, that empty house. And they go inside. Well, you as a reader would have no reason to keep reading. Why would you care about two kids going inside of an empty house? But what if at the beginning of the novel, they hinted that the house was haunted, that whoever goes in never comes out? They don't go into too much detail, but they hint, giving us a feeling that that house was danger. And as the novel progressed, they kept mentioning the haunted house, where if kids go in, they never come out. And halfway through the novel, they decide to go in. Now, all of a sudden, you have a motivation to turn the page. You want to know what's going to happen. Will they be okay? Will the protagonist be safe? The house has now become the antagonist because we have created it by hinting at it, by creating a hook. All you have to do is read a Stephen King novel, even any of his short stories, and right off the bat, you can sense that there is something out there. The antagonist is hinted at. He doesn't go into detail, but he will hint at the antagonist. Just pick up any a collection of short stories written by Stephen King, and within the first couple of paragraphs, you're hooked right away, because he will only hint at the danger down the road. And by putting ordinary, regular people as a protagonist, we then fear for them, wondering how are they going to get out of this problem. So remember, as a writer, hint and create a hook of the big bad antagonist. And that will make the people want to read on, wondering how these nice, normal protagonists will have to eventually confront the evil antagonist. If you like this video, be sure to check out my blog, where I have a ton of information that will help you become the greatest writer you can be, because I want to help you get published as fast as possible. I'll leave a link down below to my website, and you can check that out. And be sure to check out my other video on which part of the novel do you start writing first? It's a big question that everybody has, and I want to help you with that question. Here's a link to that video right here. Click on it and start watching it right away, because I want to read your novel as fast as possible.